Okay, so today we are talking about lay debate or debating in front of a judge that is not familiar with debate jargon and they're not an experienced judge and or maybe they're a parent or they're a volunteer. And we're going to be talking about how to ace those lay debate rounds. If you are in any kinds of debate events like LD, PF, Parley, any of those sounds, if you go to one or two tournaments, I can guarantee that you have had a parent judge. And a lot of times maybe you won that round, maybe you lost that round, but there's like this big thing about winning a lay debate and it being an entirely different skill set to learn. And that is why in today's video, we're going to be covering how to win almost every one of your lay debate rounds because it is really easy. Like a lot of people think it's like a really big skill and it's like if you're a people person, you get it, but it's not. It's just you need to make a bit of changes, a bit of like you need to put in a bit of effort to change the way you talk or debate in front of a lay judge. And really, that minor changes that you make in your speech, in your structuring, will help you win the round. So, before we get into any of that, I have a hot take, which honestly shouldn't even be a surprise because no debater has ever, in the history of debate, lost because of a lay judge. Just using the judge made the decision, or it was like a lay screw to cover up and justify your losses is going to achieve nothing. So, the first and best step to like win a lay debate is to stop believing in lay screws. Stop believing that the parent judge is going to screw you over because they're not flowing, or they don't know what they're doing, or they don't know what they're doing with debate and they have never debated before. That is not a thing. In every debate round, there's like like a person who wins and a person who does not, right? And there's a reason that the person who wins ends up winning. Even if it's not something that you think was related to the flow, maybe they were a better speaker, maybe they were more persuasive. In the end, all of this is an essential part of debate. So if you are losing, there is a reason that you are, and just like blaming it on judges will not help you do anything because you cannot control the judge, but what you can do is just simply be better. And why is it, again, that some people can win over the lay judges is because they actively take the effort to be able to, like, be better in front of these parent judges. Lay debate is a skill, and it's honestly a really easy one. And, like, you just need to know how to adapt to these judges. And now that we have spoken about adaptation, let's first begin with talking about how to know what way you have to adapt to a specific judge. Because lay debate or like lay parent judges and things like that, it's like a really broad term. There are a lot of parent judges who are really experienced with like judging debate because they've been doing it for years. And then there's ones who like do it for volunteering. They've done it like once or twice. So here is how to like find out how to like adapt to the judges' preferences because the entirety of lay debate is about knowing how to adapt. So the first thing is to always check their paradigm. It is common for a lot of them to not have one because they're not aware that they're supposed to write one. But if they do, you should definitely go and check. It's usually going to have things like, I am a lay judge, or I am a parent judge, or please slow down while you're speaking. Like an experienced judge, or I'm like new to debate, and things like that. Like hinters like that is obviously going to tell you that they have not judged a lot of debate in the past, and that you might have to like treat them as a lay judge or assume that they don't know much about debate. But then there's also like specific things that they can put in their paradigms like, oh, I have been judging debate for 2 years and I know how a bunch of things work, but I'm still relatively new, so skip the jargon and things like that. So tune into their preferences if they have it in their paradigm, and if they don't, a general way you can do it is that you can just go into a round, and if they look open and welcome to questions before the round starts, then you can like ask them if they did debate in high school or college, or if they have judged a lot of rounds this year or on this topic, especially if you're from LD and PF. So if you ask those questions, you'll probably get an understanding of whether they know about your topic or whether they have judged a lot previously. So you will know like what kind of level they are on, and then you can adjust yourself according to their preferences. So now, like coming to the important part, now that we have like that out of the way, you know you have a lay judge. You know you have someone who is not that experienced with debate. And then here is a bunch of debate tactics, like proper things that you should be doing when you're debating that you can really use to be able to ace that debate. The first and foremost, the most important thing, in my opinion, for every kind of lay judge is to skip the jargon. Do not use debate jargon. Like, let's say you're in a round and you end up saying things like, vote F because we outweigh on risk. They drop the plan. That doesn't link into the dissat, so our harms are the only impact you should be worrying about. If you say things like that, there's absolutely no way a judge is going to be voting for you because they simply do not understand what you're saying. Like, you might think that the more complex you sound and the more debatey you sound, that the judge is going to think that it's pretty impressive. It's actually not because they don't understand what you're saying, and if they don't understand what you're saying, they're simply going to not take notes on it. They're simply going to ignore it. So you need to dish the jargon. Other things that you should probably not say is don't use the word link. Don't say internal link. Don't say terms. Don't say disad. Just skip all the abbreviations that you think that a parent judge or maybe even your sibling who does not know debate will like if your sibling or anyone that you know does not do debate cannot tell what you're talking about, that's a good rule to not use in front of parent judges or lay judges either. So completely get rid of the jargon because it's just you can make these arguments. You can use words like contentions and you can still make your arguments without using all of these jargon. So once jargon is out of the way, the second most important thing is to explain. Like you cannot win a lay round by simply just relying on pre-written arguments and things like that until and unless you're really, really good at explaining. You need to explain almost everything. Do not assume they know anything about the topic. Just walk them through the link chains and the logics and the facts, but don't bombard them with cards or taglines. Don't just dump numbers, statistics, figures, everything on them because it's pointless. Yes, you should be using numbers. Yes, you should be using evidence when you have access to it. But that doesn't mean that you're simply just putting out, sure, a million people use the internet every second. What does that imply? What, why does it matter? What is the logic behind the argument? Why does thing A lead to thing B? You need to clearly lay everything out for them. It's also this whole thing about not going over the bounds and not over explaining your argument because when you end up doing that, it just makes it more confusing. You need to be in the perfect medium of where you are telling them the claim, you are telling them about the logic behind your arguments, and you're laying it down for them, right? But you're also not repeating the same thing 100 times because you just want to make sure that they understood what you're saying, right? A big thing to note about explaining is that you need to keep in mind that they're still educated people. They're smarter than an average high school kid doing debate. They probably wouldn't know about your topic, but they can take hints once you start explaining. They can understand things better once you start explaining. So again, that comes into the part of not over explaining your arguments just to make sure that they understood it. Because they will. You lay it down for them once, you explain it, you walk them through it, that's all. So like I feel like the thing with explaining is that once you start getting way more complex, like complexity, whether it's complexity because of your jargon or complexity because of over repetition, it's just going to be ending up killing your speech. You need to be the team that makes things easy for the judge to understand and follow. That's it. Just make it simple, skip the jargon, and explain your arguments. A good way to remember this, or a good way to find the perfect medium, is that if they were to think of it this way, if they were to leave the round without taking notes on or flowing anything you said, did you explain a new idea, a new concept, or your arguments well enough for them to simply go and explain it to someone new after the debate round ends? If you did, then you're doing an amazing job. If you feel like you explained it to them in a way that they can repeat it to someone else, then you're doing an amazing job. That's where you stop over explaining, and that's good. So once you have that, I think I feel like that's the easiest part. Just skip the jargon, explain. But once you have that down, you need to work on speaking more persuasively. You are going to see this on every parent judge ballot. Let me literally scroll back to the first slide to prove this to you. I picked this out from Tab Room. I went to all my RFDs and I tried to pick out a bunch of RFDs that parent judges or lay judges gave to me. If you look at them, all of them or most of them comment on like speaking skills and persuasiveness. So if you look at the first one, it's like pace was a bit fast, or then it ends up saying very persuasive. Assertions are more convincing. Great poise in handling POL, very nice speech. All of these things are hinting to one thing. That is that they care about how you're speaking, right? So speaking persuasively matters a lot, and it is really as simple as it sounds. Use your rhetorical devices, make funny statements. Okay, when you're using humor in your speeches, make sure you are not being offensive, or you're not even being a tryhard. Only do it if it comes naturally, but also don't overdo the humor. It's like still a debate round. You need to signpost, like you need to tell them where exactly you are on the flow. You need to project your voice. You need to stand tall. You need to talk slow. Like when parents think of public speaking, they expect confident speakers dressed in a suit and tie. Like that is the image. You're a lawyer, you're seasoned, you're professional. You also, again, you might have probably seen comments in your RFD like great speaker. They were more persuasive. They had a confident tone. Why? Because it does matter. They have these expectations and you're supposed to meet them. You need to sound confident, and the more you can tune into their preferences, the more likely they are to vote for you, because even if you may not be winning on the flow, if you sound like you know what you're talking about, they're more likely to be convinced. That is just like how it works. Like if you walk into the room and you talk like you're really passionate, if you talk like you know what you're talking about, then in the end it just makes the person want to hear and be more convinced by your arguments. So that is the thing with speaking persuasively. You need to put an active effort. If you know you have a late judge, you need to really make sure you are being that good speaker. You are making eye contact. You are explaining arguments and not just simply reading off a paper. So the next thing is reading layified impacts. So this is more specific to your content of what you're reading, your arguments and everything. So every argument is supposed to have an impact. But if you know you have a parent judge, if you know you have a lay judge, you need to let go of really complex debate ideas that we get used to, like extinction or economic decline, leading to nuclear war. There's a lot of ways you can explain this, but it's really hard for someone who does not listen to this in their daily lives. Like, parents are likely to believe in things that they watch in the news, like current events, current affairs, what is happening in the status quo, things like that do happen, like recession and everything. They're more likely to believe what does happen in the real world. Like, when was the last time human extinction happened? Like, never. They are not going to buy that. So they're less likely to believe in extinction, they're less likely to believe in really complex ideas. But they are also, again, on the flip side, they're very, very likely to believe in things like death. So if you're going for an extinction impact, like if you usually read an extinction impact, get rid of it and just simply replace it with mass death. They will believe in the fact that climate change can cause death. If you go for an economic decline leading to nuclear war, switch that and switch that with recession being bad for economy, because it is. It's a simple thing, it's a simple known fact that if we go into a recession that is bad for economy, and they are going to buy that. So you need to be very mindful of the kinds of impacts you're reading, and whether a person who's super super new to debate is going to understand a complex idea such as human extinction because of a Middle East policy. So after impacts, I guess the general thing or a mindset you can have when you're approaching lay debate is that just think of the judge as a really unimpressed judge for a very important audition you're giving. They're not flowing, they're only taking notes. They don't care about everything you're saying. They only care about the things that you are going to be emphasizing for them. So you only have a few minutes to impress them. You need to really hone in on arguments that you think are important, and then you need to realize when they're taking notes on what they're saying, on what you're saying, right? So just go into the round, assume they don't know anything, make it really easy for them to understand, speak persuasively, read arguments that they're likely to believe in, and then in the end just emphasize on points that you really think are important, because again, they are not going to be flowing every single thing you're saying. Now, now that we have that debate side of it, there's a bunch of psychological things you can do to just get the judge to be a little more convinced by you. So I picked this up from a lot of public speaking research. This is not specific to debate, but there's a lot of ways, minor things you can do that can make a little bit of difference or make the judge like a little more inclined to your side. So, the first thing is you need to pay attention to their body language and note taking. So, what points when you're speaking, what points are obviously resonating with them? As I said, they're not following everything you're saying. They're going to be taking notes. So, most of the time, they're just listening to what you're saying. And if they start writing something down, then that means you know that they like that argument or that they're taking note of it. Um, on the flip side, like when are they giving you this kind of blank stare? Like when are they zoning out? If you think that you're over explaining something or that they look confused, you need to stop doing that. You need to move on from that point. You can usually tell because like when we have a tech judge, it's like they're usually just on their computer and they're just flowing, so you can't really tell. But with parent judges, they're usually super expressive. Like if you say something that's really cool or if you say something that's like funny, they're going to react to it. They're going to nod their head. They're probably going to smile if you say something funny. So just take note of that. And especially if you're the not talking speaker, like if you're the person who is not currently speaking, you should be really, really focused on the judge. Like, obviously, you're flowing, but you should also take note of what the judge is like, how the judge is reacting to their arguments. Maybe you realize that they weren't even listening when your opponent was speaking about an argument. So, if they weren't, then don't spend that much time on it in your speech. Or if you think that they seem really convinced with with one of your opponent's arguments, then you need to make sure that you're going up in your like next speech and focusing on it. And please, if you look like if they're looking confused when you explain something, do not explain it in the same way in the next speech. Just decide to, or like you can just decide to skip it altogether if a like judge looks really confused or not convinced with one of your arguments. So just always look at their body language. The next thing is that you just need to treat the debate like a normal human interaction and communicating to the judge with like basic respect, basic reciprocity, and intention. So a lot of times we get so used to just like treating the thing as a debate round. It's just like you get super technical and you can't help it. But if you're mindful and you're just like thinking of it as a normal human interaction where you're just trying to convince a person of your arguments, then the round just becomes like easier as a whole. The next thing is to be kind. I have seen this on so many parent judge like paradigms about being kind or like being nice to your opponents. For a long time I couldn't figure out what they meant by that. Like I'm in a debate round. I know they're my opponent, right? But what this means basically is that you cannot just go up there and shame your opponent mid-speech. Well, like it comes out to be really unattractive and really aggressive if you end up saying things like, my opponent dropped every single point, or my opponent did this, my opponent did that. Like, it sounds like you don't even have enough substance to talk about, then you now have to go and attack your opponent. It looks like that. And it's really, you need to draw a line between being assertive and aggressive. Parent judges usually hate people who are super aggressive, but they do like a kind of like confident tone, a kind of dominant tone, especially in like crossfire and everything. So you need to be nice to your opponent. Your judge is going to take note of that. The next thing is to always smile. Like, yeah, this is not going to decide the entire round. Like, if you just frantically smile, it doesn't mean the judge is just going to vote for you. But say you're speaking and you stutter, and it's like you say the same word 6 times and it's just embarrassing now. If you just smile and just like apologize first, it's like you made a mistake, you smile and you say sorry, and then keep speaking. It appears really nice. It looks like you're like really handled, you're really composed, you know what you're doing. So just smiling before you begin a speech or smiling when you make a mistake, it just makes you appear more warm, and it's just like people are more likely to like listen to you if you're like a nice, confident, warm person. So after that, another thing again is to make eye contact when you're speaking. Everyone hates it when you have like a speaker who's literally reading off a screen or reading off a paper. So make sure you're making eye contact. There's always a bunch of things about this in like ballots where parent judges end up saying that really good eye contact, you sounded really confident, you're really persuasive. These are like a bunch of their favorite words. If you can like match that category, match that preferences, then you're really going to be like looking the better debater in the round. So make eye contact when you're speaking. And again, as a general tip, just act like you're super passionate about what you're saying. Act like you know everything about it. It's your field of expertise. You're there, you're convincing them of that argument. Like, if you can simply go there, I everyone has really good substance in debate. Like if it's you're in a good round, both of you are going to have good arguments, right? So you have good arguments, you have them laid down in good ways, but the thing then comes down to how good you sound. Like you need to make it appear like you know what you're talking about. You need to take note of how they're reacting to your arguments. You need to like tailor your debate. You need to structure your contentions in a way that it makes it easier for them to understand. It makes it easier for them to follow. Basically, the entire purpose of lay debate is to make the debate round easier and like enjoyable for the judge to be listening to. Lastly, there's a bunch of other important notes. So it's like, yeah, I made a big deal in this video about like your speaking skills, right? But content and your argument will always dominate. So speaking, this was like a general way you can get sound more convincing and like get that ballot. But if you have really, really bad arguments, like if they genuinely don't make sense, then the judge is not going to vote for you because again, they are educated people. They like if you end up saying something really crazy and something that's like not plausible in real life, they're probably going to ignore it. They're not going to listen about it. Again, the unimpressed judge analogy, right? So, in the end, it's always about your arguments and how well you can explain to them. Other thing I've noted quite often is that judges reward net benefits or like utilitarianism, even if the opposing side has like more organized and nuanced arguments. So that is why we usually suggest that for parliamentary debate, it's like you should go with a net benefits framework because the parent judges are, or like the lay judges are more likely to understand those. It's like, yeah, you're doing the better for society, you're more good for society, or you're minimizing suffering, right? So they often go with those kind of framework and they usually buy those frameworks. So if you can link your impacts under that framework, then it's amazing. Again, you need to be good in all three areas. You need to have good content and arguments. You also need to speak persuasively, but you also need to have a logical structure. And what I mean by that is that say you have like three contentions or something, if you feel like it's going to take up a lot of time and that you need to explain the arguments for the lay judge, then just skip one of those like contentions or don't extend them in your next speech, right? You need to structure your arguments in a way that you're having enough time to emphasize the important points and you have enough time or you're putting in or laying out in a way that it makes it easier for the judge to follow. And lastly, a big thing that I've noted is that when it's like the wooden speeches or when you really use the key phrases or things like, Judge, here's exactly why you will be voting for us. Then the judge is more likely to listen, right? You're literally telling them how to write the ballot. So use your last speeches, weigh your arguments, like give voting issues. All of that is going to help the judge know exactly where to vote for. Because if they were zoning out the entire debate, then there's at least the last speech where they're listening, where you're making them listen, that they can end up voting for you. So basically that was lay debate in a nutshell. If you have any questions, you can reach out to me on email and or like the Outreach Debate Discord. Thank you.